There was a version of you that did not make it this far. A version of you that gave up somewhere in the middle of the pain, somewhere between the loss and the silence and the unanswered prayers. But that version of you is not the one here today. The one who made it through, the one present right now, is the version heaven always knew would survive long enough to hear what is about to be spoken over your life. Think about that for a moment. Really let it settle into the deepest part of who you are. You are still here. After everything that came against you, after every wave that tried to pull you under, after every night that felt like it would never give way to morning, you are still standing. And that is not a small thing. That is not a coincidence. That is the fingerprint of God on your survival. There were moments when you did not think you would make it. There were seasons so dark, so heavy, so relentlessly suffocating, that the idea of reaching a day like this one felt impossible. You questioned yourself. You questioned your path. If you are honest, there were moments when you even questioned God. You cried out into what felt like an empty sky and heard nothing but the echo of your own breaking heart. You looked around at others who seemed to move through life with ease, who seemed untouched by the kind of weight you carried daily, and you wondered why your road was so difficult, why your journey required so much more from you than it seemed to require from anyone else around you. But here is what you could not see in those moments. Here is the truth that heaven kept sealed until now, until you were ready, until you had passed through enough of the fire to be able to receive it without it overwhelming you. The reason your road was harder is because your destination is higher. The reason the test was longer is because the assignment is greater. The reason the enemy fought you so relentlessly from the very beginning is because he read the end of your story long before you did, and he was terrified of what it said. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. Every single thing you endured, every loss that left you breathless, every betrayal that left you speechless, every door that closed in your face, every season where the ground beneath you felt like it was dissolving, it was all part of something. Not something random, not something cruel, something intentional, something precise, something orchestrated by a God who does not waste a single moment of your pain. He was building something inside of you that could not be built any other way. He was forging a version of you that only the fire could produce. And you went through that fire. You walked through it. You did not die in it. The Bible speaks in Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2 of a God who walks with you through fire, through water, through every raging current, and promises that you will not be consumed. You may have felt consumed. You may have felt like there was nothing left of you some days, but you were not consumed. You are here. That is the proof. That is the testimony. You survived what was designed to destroy you. And that survival is not just your story, it is your anointing. There is something that happens to a person who has been through the kind of pressure you have been through. Something shifts in the interior. Something is built that cannot be faked, cannot be borrowed, cannot be purchased. It is called depth. It is called unshakable faith. It is the kind of trust in God that does not come from reading about Him from a distance, but from walking through the valley with Him so closely that you learned the sound of His voice in the dark. That is what you have. Now, that is what the testing season gave you, and no one can take it from you. You need to understand what a test actually means in the kingdom of God. A test is not God abandoning you. A test is God trusting you. When a teacher gives a student an examination, the teacher is not present to answer the questions for them. The teacher steps back, not because they have left, but because the test only has value if the student works through it themselves. God stepped back in those silent seasons not because he stopped loving you, not because he forgot your name, but because he knew you were capable of passing. He already knew the result. He needed you to discover it for yourself. And you did. You passed. You passed when you chose to get up on the morning. You had every reason to stay down. You passed when you chose to believe, when everything around you screamed that there was nothing left to believe in. You passed when you let go of the bitterness that had every legal right to take root in your heart and chose instead to keep your heart open. You passed when you kept praying into silence. You passed when you kept going forward even though you could not see the path. You passed in ways you did not even recognize as passing, because in the middle of the test, you were too focused on surviving to notice that you were actually overcoming. Heaven was watching every moment. Every tear you shed in private, God collected. Every prayer you whispered when no one else could hear, heaven recorded. Every act of faith you chose when fear was the more reasonable option, it was logged in the books of eternity. You were not invisible in your pain. You were seen in extraordinary detail by a God who misses nothing and forgets nothing about the people he has chosen. And you are chosen. Not chosen because you are perfect. Not chosen because your record is spotless. Not chosen because you never doubted or stumbled or fell. You are chosen because God looked at the raw material of your soul, the resilience beneath the wounds, the hunger beneath the exhaustion, the faith beneath the fear, and he said, this is the one. This is the one I can trust with the weight of what I am about to release. That selection was not made yesterday. It was not made when things started looking up for you. It was made before you were born, before your parents gave you your name, before the first breath entered your lungs. You were written into the plan of God before the foundation of the world was laid. If chapter 1 verse 4 tells you that he chose you in Christ before the creation of the world, before there was a world to navigate, before there was a test to endure, before there was a journey to survive, you were already chosen. Everything you have walked through has simply been the unfolding of a purpose that was decided before time began. So let that reframe everything. Let it reframe the hard years. Let it reframe the losses. Let it reframe the painful seasons that felt purposeless and cruel. They were not purposeless. They were precise. They were appointments, not accidents. They were classrooms, not punishments. And you sat in every single one of them and you learned, and now, right now, at this exact moment in your life, heaven is ready to show you what all of that learning was for. This is not the middle of your story. This is not another chapter of struggle with a thin layer of hope sprinkled on top. This is a turning point. This is the moment the narrative shifts. This is the moment the tide turns. The moment the wind changes direction, the moment heaven opens its hand and begins to release what has been held in reserve for the one who passed the test, and that one is you. If you feel something stirring in your chest right now, if something inside you is rising, if something that was dormant is beginning to wake up, pay attention to that. That is not emotion, that is recognition. That is the part of you that has always known who you were beginning to come into agreement with what God has always declared over your life. You passed the test. The season of proving is ending. The season of rising is beginning. And nothing, not the enemy, not your past, not the opinions of the people who doubted you, not even your own moments of disbelief. Nothing can stop what God has decided to do in your life from this moment forward. Type the number 77 in the comments right now if you receive this. Type 77 if you are ready to step into everything heaven has been preparing you for. Let it be your declaration that the old season is finished and the new one has already begun. Before you were given a name, before the world had any record of your existence, before your first heartbeat announced your arrival into time. There was a conversation that took place outside of time entirely. It was not a conversation between human beings. It was not a decision made in a hospital room or a family home. It was a divine deliberation, a sovereign choice made in the councils of eternity, and the subject of that conversation was you. God looked across the full landscape of human history, every soul that would ever draw breath, every life that would ever unfold across the centuries, and in that vast, immeasurable scope of humanity, he saw you, and he chose you, not eventually, not reluctantly, not as a second option after someone more qualified declined. He chose you first, fully, and with absolute certainty. This is the part that many people struggle to receive. It feels too large. It feels too personal. It feels like the kind of thing that happens to other people, to people whose lives look more significant from the outside, to people who seem more spiritually polished, more gifted, more visibly anointed. But that is precisely the enemy's most effective lie. He wants you to believe that being chosen is a category reserved for someone else, because if you ever fully grasp that it was reserved for you, the battle he has waged against your life for years becomes completely exposed for what it always was: confirmation. Because here is the truth that changes everything. You do not fight things that are powerless. Darkness does not mobilize against people who pose no threat. The enemy does not dedicate years of strategic opposition to a life that carries no kingdom assignment. If you have experienced unusual resistance, if your life has been marked by a pattern of attacks that seemed almost personal in their precision, if you have felt targeted in ways that went beyond ordinary hardship, it is because you were targeted, and the reason you were targeted is the same reason God chose you. Your potential in the kingdom of God is something the enemy has always understood better than you have allowed yourself to believe. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5 carries one of the most breathtaking declarations in all of Scripture. God speaks directly to Jeremiah and says, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Read that slowly and let it land on your soul. Before formation, before birth, before the womb. For the beginning of the biological process that would bring Jeremiah into the world, God had already known him, already set him apart, already given him an assignment. That was not a statement exclusive to Jeremiah. That is a principle that belongs to every soul God has called. And God is speaking that same truth directly over your life in this moment. You were known before you were formed. Think about what that means. It means that nothing about your life has surprised God. Not the family you were born into, not the difficulties that shaped your early years, not the wounds that were inflicted before you were old enough to even understand what was happening to you, not the detours and the wrong turns and the seasons of wandering. God knew all of it before any of it existed, and he chose you anyway. He chose you in full knowledge of every chapter of your story, including the chapters that have been the hardest to live through. And he looked at the complete picture and said, "This one is worth it. This one is mine." There is a weight to that which should undo every lie you have ever believed about being too broken, too late, too far gone, or too ordinary to be used by God in any significant way. Being chosen by God is not contingent on you being flawless. It never was. Look at the people God chose throughout Scripture, and you will find a remarkable pattern. He chose Moses, who had a violent past and a speech impediment. He chose David, who was so overlooked by his own father that he was not even invited to the gathering where a king would be selected. He chose Rahab, a woman whose profession would have made her invisible to every religious institution of her time. He chose Paul, who spent years actively persecuting the very faith he would later die to defend. God does not select based on the criteria the world uses. He selects based on what he has placed on the inside, and what he has placed on the inside of you is something extraordinary. There is a calling on your life that has been waiting for this moment, not the version of you that existed before the testing season, not the version of you that had not yet been through the fire. This version, the refined version, the one who came out of the pressure carrying something that was not present before you went in. The anointing on your life has been deepened by what you have endured. The authority you carry has been expanded by the very warfare that tried to reduce you. Every attack the enemy launched against your destiny had the opposite effect of what he intended. He meant to bury you. God meant to plant you, and planted things grow. You were never meant to blend into the background of this generation. You were never designed to live a life that went unnoticed, that left no mark, that contributed nothing to the unfolding of God's purposes on the earth. You were placed here, in this specific generation, at this specific moment in history, because there is something this moment requires that only the version of you that exists right now can provide. That is not arrogance. That is assignment. There is a difference between pride and purpose, and what you are being called into right now is purpose at its most precise and powerful. The people in your life who could not understand you were not seeing clearly. The ones who dismissed you, who underestimated you, who wrote you off as too sensitive or too intense or too different, they were not seeing what God sees when he looks at you. They were seeing the exterior of a vessel without any understanding of what was being forged on the inside. But God saw it. He always saw it. And he never changed his mind about you, not once, through any of the seasons that tested your faith, your resolve, or your sense of identity. You were chosen before you were born. And everything you have lived through since the moment you arrived in this world has been the deliberate, careful, loving process of a father who was preparing his chosen one for a moment, exactly like this one, a moment of awakening, a moment of recognition, a moment where the veil lifts and you begin to see yourself not through the lens of your history, but through the lens of your destiny. Before we go deeper into what this means for your life, this channel wants to pause and speak directly to you for just a moment. If this message is reaching something real inside of you, if these words are landing in places that have needed to hear this truth, we want to say simply and sincerely, thank you for being here. Your presence in this community matters more than you know. If this ministry has been a source of encouragement, of strength, or of renewed faith for you, and if you feel led to help us continue producing this kind of content, we have placed a support link in the description. Everything there is completely voluntary. There is no obligation and no pressure. Whether you are able to give or not, we are deeply grateful that you are here, that you are listening, and that you are walking this journey with us. If this video has spoken to your heart, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear that they were chosen before they were born. A simple like or a subscription helps this message reach more people who are waiting for exactly this word. Now, if you are ready, type the words "I was chosen" in the comments right now. Let that be your declaration over your own life. Now let us continue. Because the truth of why you were selected before birth is directly connected to what the enemy spent years trying to make you forget. And the next part of this revelation is going to expose exactly why every painful thing you walked through was not a sign that God had abandoned his plan for you, but the very evidence that the plan was always very much alive. You did not lose those people. You were liberated from them. There is a difference, and until you understand that difference at the deepest level of your soul, you will continue to grieve what was never meant to stay, mourning the departure of things that God Himself removed because they were incompatible with where He was taking you. Every betrayal you experienced, every friendship that dissolved without warning, every relationship that ended in confusion and pain, every door that was slammed in your face by someone you trusted, every alliance that crumbled at the exact moment you needed it most, none of it was accidental. None of it was a failure of your worth. Every single departure was a divine reassignment, and heaven orchestrated every one of them with a precision that should take your breath away when you finally see it clearly. Let us be honest about how it felt, though, because the truth of what God was doing does not erase the reality of how deeply it hurt. Betrayal is not a shallow wound. When someone you loved and trusted turns against you, when someone you invested years of your life into walks away without looking back, when someone who knew your secrets and your struggles uses that knowledge against you, the pain is not small and it is not quick to heal. You felt it in your body. You felt it in your sleep. You carried it into rooms where no one could see it, and you sat with it in the silence of nights that felt endless. That kind of pain is real, and God never asked you to pretend that it was not. But now, from the distance of time, from the other side of those seasons, you are being invited to look back at those losses through a different lens. Not a lens that minimizes the pain, but a lens that reveals the purpose. Because when you look carefully, when you trace the trajectory of your life from those moments of loss forward, you will begin to see a pattern that is unmistakably divine. Every person who left created a space. Every relationship that ended made room. Every door that closed redirected your feet onto a path you would never have chosen on your own. But that turned out to be the very road that led you here, to this moment, to this awakening, to this threshold of everything God has been building toward in your life. The Bible is full of people who were betrayed on their way to their destiny. Joseph is perhaps the most vivid example in all of Scripture. His brothers, the very people who should have been his greatest protectors and champions, stripped him of his coat, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. If you had asked Joseph in that moment whether God was working all things together for his good, his answer from the bottom of that pit might have been very different from the declaration he would make decades later. But the pit was not the end of Joseph's story. It was the beginning of his preparation. The betrayal of his brothers did not derail his destiny. It was the very vehicle that delivered him to it. What they meant for evil, God was already converting into a pathway toward purpose that none of them had the eyes to see. Your betrayers did not have the eyes to see what they were doing either. The people who walked away from you, the ones who chose their comfort over your friendship, the ones who valued their own advancement over your well-being, the ones who took what you gave and left when there was nothing left to take, they did not understand that. They were participating in a divine pruning. They thought they were simply making choices that served themselves. But God was using their selfishness as a surgical instrument. He was using their departure as a scalpel, cutting away what was attached to your life but was not aligned with your assignment. And pruning, though it looks like loss, is always in service of growth. John chapter 15 verse 2 records the words of Jesus speaking plainly about this very principle. He says that every branch that bears fruit, the Father prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. Notice that pruning is not reserved for the weak or the struggling. It is applied specifically to the branches that are already bearing fruit. God does not prune what is dead. He prunes what is alive and growing, because He can see the greater harvest that is possible if the excess is removed. He pruned your life, not because you were failing, but because He could see the greater fruitfulness that was possible. Once the weight of misaligned relationships was lifted from your shoulders. Think about the people who are no longer in your life and ask yourself honestly, would you have become who you are today if they had stayed? Would you have sought God with the same desperation if the crowd around you had remained comfortable and familiar? Would you have developed the depth, the resilience, the unshakable inner strength that you now carry if the comfort of those relationships had insulated you from the kind of sacred discomfort that drives a person deeper into their calling? In most cases, the honest answer is no. The removal of what was comfortable is often what creates the conditions for what is extraordinary. There is also another dimension to the betrayals you experienced that goes beyond pruning. It was protection. Some of the people who left your life were not simply misaligned with your assignment. They were actively incompatible with your elevation. And if they had remained in your inner circle as you began to ascend into the fullness of what God has for you, they would have become anchors rather than wings. Their presence would have capped your growth, limited your perspective, and kept you tethered to a version of yourself that God was finished with. God removed them not as an act of cruelty toward you, but as an act of foresight. He could see what they would cost you in the next chapter, and He loved you too much to let you pay that price. This is where it becomes important to release the bitterness that may still be sitting in corners of your heart that you have not yet fully surrendered. Bitterness toward those who betrayed you is understandable. It is a human response to human pain. But bitterness, if held long enough, becomes a prison that keeps you in the past while your future stands waiting. The person who wronged you has moved on with their life. They are not sitting in the prison of that moment the way you are when you rehearse the betrayal in your mind. The only one being held captive by your refusal to release it is you. And God is asking you today, right here in this moment, to open your hand and let it go. Not for their sake, for yours. For the sake of the destiny that is on the other side of your freedom. Forgiveness is not the declaration that what they did was acceptable. It is the declaration that what God has for you is more important than what they did to you. It is the decision to stop letting a past wound determine the size of your future. It is the act of handing the offense to God and trusting that He is a better judge than you could ever be, that He sees the full picture in ways that you cannot, and that He is more than capable of handling the justice while you focus on the journey. The closed doors deserve the same reframing. Every opportunity that did not come through, every position you applied for and did not receive, every business that did not launch the way you envisioned, every dream that seemed to die before it ever had a chance to breathe, those were not failures. They were redirections. God closed those doors because He had already seen what was behind them, and what was behind them was not what He had promised you. He closed the good doors to keep you available for the God doors. He allowed the lesser things to fall away so that when the right thing arrived, you would have the capacity, the clarity, and the freedom to receive it fully. You are not behind. You are not damaged beyond use. You are not the sum of every betrayal and every closed door and every relationship that ended in pain. You are the product of a God who redeems all of it, who weaves even the darkest threads into the tapestry of a story that will ultimately display His glory through your life. The stripping you endured was not your ending. It was your preparation. And the person who stands on the other side of that stripping, the person you have become through all of it, is exactly who God has been, building toward all along. Every loss was loaded with purpose. Every betrayal was a brushstroke on a canvas that is far larger than you have yet been able to see. And what is being painted, what is being revealed in your life right now as the fog of those painful seasons begins to lift, is a picture of divine faithfulness, so breathtaking that even the people who doubted you will one day stand in wonder at what God did through the very life they underestimated. There is a season that every chosen one must pass through that has no fanfare, no visible progress, no applause, and no audience. It is the season that looks from the outside like nothing is happening, like life has stalled, like the promises of God have grown cold and distant, like the calling you once felt so clearly has somehow evaporated into the silence. It is the season that the Bible calls the wilderness, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood chapter in the entire journey of a person who has been set apart by God for something significant. Because the wilderness does not look like preparation. It looks like abandonment. It feels like failure. It carries the weight of a question that no one around you seems able to answer, which is this: if God truly chose me, if there truly is a purpose on my life, then why does everything feel so completely, utterly still? You may have lived through that season already. You may be standing in the middle of it right now. Either way, what you are about to understand will reframe everything you thought the wilderness was, and it will turn what felt like the most painful and purposeless chapter of your life into the most sacred and significant one. The wilderness is where God does his most intimate work, not his most visible work, not his most celebrated work, his most intimate work. Because in the wilderness, all of the noise falls away. The voices of people who defined you by their expectations go quiet. The distractions that kept you busy but not fruitful are stripped back. The scaffolding of other people's opinions and validation is removed. And what is left, what remains when everything external has been peeled away, is just you and God. And it is in that raw, unadorned, unperformed space that God can finally reach the places in you that were previously inaccessible because they were buried under layers of activity, performance, and noise. Moses understood this before he stood before Pharaoh and commanded the most powerful empire on earth to release millions of captives, before he parted the Red Sea with a staff raised in faith, before he became the liberator of an entire nation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness of Midian. 40 years, not 40 days, not 40 weeks. 40 years of silence, of obscurity, of tending someone else's sheep in a land that was not his home, carrying the weight of an identity crisis so profound that the man who would one day speak face to face with God described himself as someone who could barely speak at all. The wilderness did not diminish Moses. It dismantled the version of him that was not yet ready for the assignment. And when God finally spoke from the burning bush, he was not speaking to the Egyptian prince who had tried to deliver his people through human strength and had failed catastrophically. He was speaking to a man who had been emptied of his own agenda, his own pride, his own strategies, and was therefore finally spacious enough to carry the fullness of what God was about to pour in. Your wilderness did the same thing. Every quiet season you endured, every period of waiting that stretched far beyond what felt reasonable, every month and year where nothing seemed to move, and the prayers you prayed seemed to evaporate. Before they reached the ceiling, God was not absent in any of it. He was present in the most concentrated, most deliberate, most purposeful way imaginable. He was in the silence, reaching into the architecture of your soul and doing the kind of deep structural work that simply cannot be done when life is loud and busy, full of the movement that makes us feel productive, but sometimes keeps us shallow. The wilderness is where God builds the interior, and the interior is everything, because what you carry on the inside is what determines how much you can carry on the outside. A person who has not had their interior built up by God in the quiet seasons will collapse under the weight of the blessing. When it finally arrives, they will not be able to sustain the elevation. They will reach a certain height, and the unresolved places within them, the unhealed wounds, the unrenewed mindsets, the undealt with fears and insecurities, will pull them back down to a level that matches their interior rather than their assignment. God, in His profound mercy and wisdom, will not release you into the fullness of your calling until He has first built the capacity within you to hold it. The wilderness is that building season. It is not punishment. It is architecture. Think about Elijah, who, after one of the most extraordinary displays of divine power in all of biblical history, calling fire down from heaven, confronting hundreds of false prophets, watching God move in ways that were undeniable and supernatural, found himself collapsed under a broom tree in the wilderness, so exhausted and depleted that he asked God to let him die. And what did God do in that moment? He did not rebuke him. He did not lecture him about the greatness of what he had just accomplished. He sent an angel to bring him bread and water. He let him sleep. He fed him again. He spoke to him in a still, small voice in the mouth of a cave. God met Elijah's wilderness moment not with a sermon, but with sustenance. He cared for the whole person, body, soul, and spirit in the place of breaking. Before he sent him back out with a renewed assignment, God has been doing that for you in your wilderness. In the moments of your deepest exhaustion, when you had nothing left to give and no more strength to perform or push or strive, He was providing exactly what you needed to survive the next part of the journey. Not always in the way you expected, not always in the dramatic, visible way that would have made a good testimony in the moment. Sometimes in the quietest, most subtle provision, a conversation that arrived at the right time, a scripture that leapt off the page when you needed it most, a peace that made no logical sense given the circumstances you were sitting in. That was God in the wilderness. That was His presence sustaining you in the very season that looked from the outside like He had gone somewhere else. The wilderness also does something else that is profoundly important for everything that is about to unfold in your life. It teaches you to hear God's voice above every other voice. When life is full and loud, we can mistake many voices for God's: the voice of culture, the voice of comparison, the voice of fear dressed up in the language of wisdom, the voice of other people's expectations translated into what we believe God wants for us. But in the wilderness, when the noise has been stripped away and it is just you and the silence and the God who fills that silence, you learn to distinguish His voice with a clarity that you simply cannot develop any other way. And the level of assignment that is coming into your life requires that kind of clarity. It requires a person who will not be moved by every wind of opinion, who will not be derailed by every voice that claims to speak with authority, who knows with unshakable certainty what God said and will hold to it regardless of what the surrounding circumstances are screaming. Your wilderness gave you that. It trained your spiritual ears. It tuned your heart to a frequency that most people around you cannot access because they have never been willing to go through the silence long enough to find it. That is a gift, one of the most valuable gifts that will serve you in everything that is coming. This ministry exists to speak into the wilderness seasons, to be a voice that reminds you of the truth when the silence becomes disorienting. to anchor your soul in the faithfulness of God when the waiting stretches longer than you thought you could bear. And if these words have been a companion to you in your own quiet seasons, if this channel has been a place where you found strength to keep believing when everything around you suggested that you should stop, we want to say from the deepest place of sincerity that we are grateful beyond what words can adequately express. Keeping this ministry going requires resources, and we never want to be anything less than completely transparent about that. If God has used these messages to speak into your life, and if you feel led in your heart to help us continue reaching people who are walking through their own wilderness seasons, there is a support link available in the description below. Everything there is entirely voluntary. There is no obligation, no pressure, and no expectation attached to it. Whether you are in a season of abundance and feel moved to give, or whether you yourself are in a wilderness season where giving is simply not possible, we want you to know that your presence here is already a gift to us. The fact that you are listening, that you are seeking, that you are pressing in even when it is hard, that means everything. And we are honored to walk this road beside you. The wilderness is ending. The silence is breaking. And what God built in you during the years of quiet is about to become visible in ways that will leave no one who knows you in any doubt about who was at work in your life all along. There is something that has been hunting you, not randomly, not carelessly, not as part some of the broad and indiscriminate campaign against humanity in general, but specifically, deliberately, and with a focused intensity that has at times felt almost personal in its precision. And the reason it has felt personal is because it is personal. The opposition that has marked your life, the patterns of attack that have followed you across seasons and circumstances, the recurring nature of the Kirud, resistance you have faced even when you changed your environment, your relationships, your city, your career. The enemy did not lose track of you when you moved. He was never confused about who you were. He has always known. And the fact that he has always known is itself one of the most powerful confirmations of your calling that you have ever been given, even if no one has ever framed it that way for you before. Darkness does not quote most concentrated opposition against ordinary targets. That is not how spiritual warfare operates. The enemy is not omnipresent, he is not omniscient, and he is not unlimited in his resources. He is a defeated being operating on borrowed time, and he knows it, which means he is strategic about where he focuses his attention. He does not waste his best spins on lives that pose no threat to his agenda. He does not orchestrate years of targeted, layered, multi-front attacks against someone who was never going to amount to anything significant in the kingdom of God. That would be a waste of his limited capacity, and whatever else the enemy is, he is not wasteful. He is calculating. He attacks with intention, and the fact that he has attacked you with such consistency, such creativity, and such persistence across so many different seasons of your life is not evidence of your weakness. It is evidence of your threat level. Think back across the timeline of your life and begin to trace the pattern. Many chosen ones can identify attacks that began in childhood, disruptions to their early formation that seemed designed to wound them in the specific places where their greatest gifts were being developed. A child with an extraordinary capacity for love is often wounded earliest and deepest in the area of relationship. A child with a prophetic gift, with heightened spiritual sensitivity, often experiences fear, confusion, and spiritual attack in those earliest years, in ways that other children around them simply do not. A child with a calling to lead is often placed in environments where authority is abused against them, where the very concept of leadership becomes tangled up with pain and mistrust. The enemy studies the gift and then targets the area of formation that would produce that gift, trying to corrupt the soil before the seed can take root. He tried to do that to you, and in some areas, the wounds he inflicted in those early years did create places of brokenness that you have had to walk through healing to address. But here is what the enemy never accounts for, and it is the thing that consistently undoes his plans against the lives of the people God has chosen. He cannot create anything. He can only corrupt and counterfeit. He does not have the authority to erase what God has written on the inside of you. He can wound the vessel. He cannot destroy the calling. He can delay the manifestation. He cannot cancel the purpose. He can introduce confusion about identity. He cannot remove the identity that God established before the foundation of the world. Every weapon he has ever formed against your life has had a ceiling on its power, and that ceiling was placed there by the God who chose you and who has never, not for a single moment, released his hold on the purpose he placed inside of you. The book of Job gives us perhaps the most transparent window into this dynamic that Scripture offers. Here is a man described by God himself as blameless and upright, a man who feared God and turned away from evil, and yet the attacks that came against his life were catastrophic by any measure. He lost his children, his wealth, his health, and the support of the very people who should have been his comfort. And the question that echoes through the entire book of Job is the same question you have asked in your own wilderness, your own seasons of relentless attack. What did I do? What is the point of this? Where are you, God, in the middle of all of this destruction? But what the book of Job reveals that Job himself could not see from inside the storm is that the very fact that the enemy had to ask God for permission before he could touch Job's life is itself a staggering declaration of divine sovereignty. The enemy could not simply reach into Job's life and do whatever he pleased. He had to present himself before God and receive a boundary, a limit, a line he was not permitted to cross. And that same principle governs every attack that has ever come against your life. The enemy has never had unlimited access to you. Every trial you have endured, every attack you have survived, every season of assault that you walked through and came out the other side of, it all happened within boundaries that God himself set. The fire was real. The pain was real. But the enemy was always on a leash, and the hand holding that leash has never loosened its grip. There is also something significant about the timing of the enemy's attacks that deserves your careful attention. His opposition against your life has often intensified at the very moments when you were closest to a breakthrough. Right before the promotion, right before the relationship that would have changed your trajectory, right before the door opened, right before the season shifted. He attacks hardest at the threshold. He knows that if he can overwhelm you in the moment, just before the breakthrough arrives, he can potentially cause you to step back, to give up, to walk away from the very door that was about to open. He does not fight you in the middle of nowhere. He fights you at the edge of somewhere significant, because that is where the stakes are highest for his agenda. So, if you can look back and identify moments where the attack was so intense that you almost quit, almost walked away, almost gave up on the very thing you had been believing for, understand that the intensity of the opposition was itself a signal that you were standing at a threshold of enormous significance. The enemy was not trying to take you down because you were heading nowhere. He was trying to turn you around because you were heading somewhere that terrified him. And you did not turn around. You did not quit. You are here, and you are still standing, and that means every threshold the enemy fought to keep you from, you are about to cross. Because the one thing the enemy cannot do, The one outcome that is categorically outside of his power to produce is the defeat of a chosen one who refuses to stay down. He can knock you down. He does not have the authority to keep you there if you choose to rise. And you have chosen to rise, again and again and again, across every season that tried to bury you. And that pattern of rising is itself the mark of the one whom God has kept. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 8 describes the enemy as a roaring lion, walking about seeking whom he may devour. And the key word in that verse is seeking. He is looking for someone he may devour, not someone he will devour, not someone he has the guaranteed power to consume. He is seeking, which implies that there are those he cannot have. There are those whose lives are so enclosed within the protection and purpose of God that no matter how loudly the enemy roars, he cannot reach what God has sealed. You are one of those people. You are enclosed. You are covered. You are kept. Every attack was a miscalculation on his part. Every assault that he designed to end your story only added another chapter. Every weapon that was formed against you only served to demonstrate, over and over across the whole timeline of your life, that you carry a protection that goes beyond human explanation. You are not alive and standing and moving toward your destiny because you are strong enough. You are alive and standing and moving toward your destiny because the God who chose you before you were born has been fighting for you every single day that you have been alive. And he has never lost a battle on your behalf, not once, not ever, and he is not about to start now. There comes a moment in the journey of every chosen one where everything narrows down to a single defining choice. Not a choice between good and evil, not a choice between obedience and outright rebellion, but something far more subtle and far more costly than either of those. It is the choice between holding on and letting go, between trusting your own understanding of how things should unfold and surrendering completely to the wisdom of a God whose ways are higher than your ways and whose thoughts are higher than your thoughts, in the same measure that the heavens are higher than the earth. It is the choice that sits at the very center of the final and most grueling phase of the test you have been walking through. And it is the choice that determines whether a chosen one steps into the fullness of their assignment or continues to circle the same mountain, close to the promise but not yet inside it. Obedience and surrender are two words that are often used interchangeably in the language of faith, but they are not quite the same thing, and the distinction matters enormously when you are standing at the threshold that you are standing at right now. Obedience is the action. It is the doing of what God asks, the following of the instruction, the carrying out of the command even when it is uncomfortable or inconvenient or costly. And obedience is absolutely essential. It is the language through which faith becomes visible, the way that trust in God translates from an interior conviction into an exterior reality that changes the world around you. But surrender is deeper than obedience. Surrender is the interior posture that makes genuine obedience possible. Surrender is the releasing of your right to understand, your right to control the outcome, your right to have the journey look the way you thought it would look when God first placed the vision in your heart. Surrender is not passive. It is one of the most active and demanding spiritual disciplines a human being can engage in, because the human heart does not naturally want to let go of control. It does not naturally want to release the steering wheel, especially after years of navigating painful terrain that required enormous vigilance just to survive. And so God waits. He waits for the moment when you finally, fully, completely open your hand and release what you have been gripping. Not because He needs your permission to move. He is God. He could act at any moment, regardless of your posture. but because he is not simply interested in delivering the outcome. He is interested in the state of your soul when the outcome arrives. He knows that a person who steps into divine elevations, still gripping the wheel of their own control, will immediately begin trying to manage and maneuver and strategize their way through the blessing, the same way they tried to manage and maneuver their way through the wilderness. And a blessing that is managed by human striving rather than sustained by divine grace will eventually collapse under the weight of the effort required to maintain it. Abraham understood this at a level that most of us spend our entire lives trying to reach. God had given him a promise so extraordinary, so far beyond the natural realm of possibility, that it required decades of waiting and believing before it was fulfilled. And then, when the fulfillment finally arrived in the form of a son named Isaac, the son of laughter, the son of the impossible made possible, God asked for him back. He asked Abraham to take Isaac to the mountain and offer him as a sacrifice. And what Abraham did in that moment is the most breathtaking act of surrender in all of Scripture. He got up early in the morning. He did not wait, did not delay, did not spend days trying to reason his way around the instruction. He rose early, saddled his donkey, and went. He walked his most precious possession, the living proof of everything God had promised him, up a mountain with a knife in his hand and faith in his heart that was so complete, so total, so absolutely surrendered to the character of God, that he told his servants to wait because he and the boy were going up to worship, and they would both come back down. He released the outcome to God before he knew what the outcome would be. And it was precisely in that moment of complete surrender, not before it, not after a reasonable amount of negotiating, but in that exact moment of total release, that God intervened. The ram appeared in the thicket. The knife did not fall, and Isaac lived. The promise was preserved, but it was preserved through surrender, not through Abraham's ability to protect it himself. God has been waiting for your moment of surrender. He has been watching you carry things that were always meant to be placed in his hands. Plans you developed because you stopped trusting that his timing was reliable. Strategies you constructed because the silence felt too much like an action, and you felt compelled to fill it with movement. Relationships you tried to hold together with your own effort because you were afraid of what it would mean if they fell apart. Identities you performed because you had not yet fully trusted that who God says you are is enough, that the version of you he created is valuable without the additions and the management, and the constant effort to be seen as worthy. He is asking you, right here in this moment, to open your hand, not to give up. Surrender and giving up are not the same thing. Giving up is walking away from the promise. Surrender is walking toward God with the promise in your open hands and saying, I trust you with this more than I trust myself. It is the difference between releasing and abandoning. You are not abandoning your dreams. You are releasing them into the hands of the one who gave them to you in the first place. The one who has more invested in their fulfillment than you do. The one whose reputation is tied to the faithfulness of his word over your life. The final phase of the test is always the surrender phase. It is the moment where God examines not your performance, but your posture. He has already seen your obedience across the years of the journey. He has watched you pray when you did not feel like praying, serve when you were depleted, believe when the evidence suggested you should stop. He has seen the obedience. Now he is looking at the surrender. Now he is asking whether you will trust him not just with the doing but with the outcome. Whether you will release the timeline. Whether you will loosen your grip on how you thought this was supposed to look and allow him to bring it to pass in the way that he with the full perspective of eternity, knows is best. This is the posture that unlocks the next chapter. This is the threshold that, once crossed in your interior, causes the exterior circumstances of your life to begin to shift in ways that will confirm everything God has been speaking over you. The surrender is the key, and God is handing it to you right now and asking you to use it. If you have been carrying something that you know belongs in God's hands, if there is a plan or a relationship or an outcome or a timeline that you have been gripping so tightly that your knuckles are spiritually white, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when things feel more settled. Now, open your hand right now in whatever way that looks like for you, and whisper to God that you trust Him with it. That simple act of interior release is more powerful than any strategy you could construct, any move you could make, any door you could knock on with your own strength. This channel exists to walk with you through exactly these kinds of moments, the threshold moments, the surrender moments, the moments where the language of heaven needs to reach the deepest and most guarded places of your heart. If these words have been a companion to you in the hard seasons, if this space has been somewhere you return to when you need to be reminded of who you are and what God has spoken over your life, we want you to know that your presence here sustains this ministry in ways that go beyond the visible. And if you feel in your heart a desire to partner with us in a more tangible way, to help us continue producing messages that reach people standing at exactly the thresholds you have stood at, there is a link in the description where you can do that. It is completely voluntary, offered in the spirit of partnership rather than obligation, and received with genuine gratitude regardless of the amount. Every contribution, large or small, goes directly toward keeping this voice available to the people who need it most. If this message has spoken to something real in your life today, a simple like and a share could place it in front of someone who has been waiting for exactly this word. And if you are not yet subscribed, we would be honored to have you as a consistent part of this community. You belong here. Heaven has already spoken. That is the first thing you need to understand as you stand at the threshold of everything that is about to unfold in your life. The verdict over your existence was not declared yesterday. It was not declared when things began to look more hopeful, when the circumstances started to shift, when the first signs of breakthrough became visible on the horizon. The verdict was declared before the trial began, before the wilderness, before the betrayals, before the sleepless nights and the unanswered prayers and the seasons of silence that stretched so long you began to wonder if the voice of God had simply moved on to someone more worthy. Before any of it, heaven opened its mouth and spoke over your life. And what was has not changed, has not been revised, has not been retracted, and cannot be overturned by anything that has happened in the years between that declaration and this moment. You need to let that settle into the marrow of your bones. The verdict of heaven is not contingent on the verdict of your circumstances. It is not contingent on the verdict of the people around you who assessed your potential and found it lacking. It is not contingent on the verdict of your own inner critic, that relentless voice that has cataloged every failure, every misstep, every moment of weakness and used them as evidence that perhaps the calling you felt was imagined. Perhaps the sense of destiny was self-deception. Perhaps you were never quite as chosen as you hoped. None of those verdicts carry any weight in the courts of eternity. There is only one verdict that matters, and it was spoken by the only one whose opinion about your life is final and absolute and eternal. And that verdict is this: approved, refined, ready, released. The word that God spoke over you before the foundation of the world was not a tentative word. It was not a hopeful word that was subject to revision based on how well you performed. It was a sovereign declaration, the kind that carries the full authority of the one who spoke it, the one who spoke light into existence out of nothing, the one who hung the stars in their positions and named every one of them, the one who formed the mountains and measured the waters in the hollow of his hand. That God speaks a word over a life, the universe itself rearranges to make room for its fulfillment. What he declares, he delivers. What he promises, he performs. What he begins in a life, he completes with a faithfulness that outlasts every obstacle, every opposition, and every season of apparent delay. Romans chapter 8 verse 30 gives us a breathtaking glimpse into the sequence of God's sovereign work in the lives of those he has called. It tells us that those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. Notice the tense in which that final word is written. Not those he will glorify. Those he glorified, past tense. In the economy of eternity, in the perspective of a God who exists outside of time and sees the end from the beginning as clearly as he sees the present moment, your glorification is already accomplished. The outcome is already secured. Heaven is not waiting to see how your story ends. Heaven has already read the last page, and it reads like a triumph. This is not a message of presumption. It is not a declaration that you have no further responsibility, no further growth required, no further surrender to navigate. The journey continues. The daily choices of faith and obedience remain essential, but the destination is not in question. The final word over your life has already been written, and it was written by a God who does not make mistakes, who does not change his mind based on the fluctuations of human performance, and who is not surprised by anything you have been through or anything that still lies ahead on the road. Think about what it means practically to live under a verdict that has already been declared in your favor. It means that you can stop performing for approval that has already been given. It means you can stop striving to prove yourself to a God who already knows exactly who you are and has already declared you worthy of the assignment he placed on your life. It means you can stop letting the opinions of people who do not have access to the divine verdict function as the loudest voice in the room of your identity. They are not the judge. They never were. And their assessments, however painful they may have been, however deeply they may have lodged themselves in the corners of your heart, carry zero authority over what heaven has already spoken. The prophet Isaiah records in chapter 43 verse 1, one of the most direct, most personal divine declarations in all of Scripture. God speaks and says, "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." 3 statements, each one carrying more weight than the human heart can fully contain. Do not fear. The instruction is not a dismissal of the reality of danger or difficulty. It is a command built on the foundation of a promise. Do not fear because of what I have done and what I have declared. I have redeemed you. Past tense again. The redemption is accomplished. The price has been paid. The transaction is complete. I have called you by name, not by category, not by collective, by name. Your specific name, known before it was given to you by your parents, spoken in eternity before your parents existed, written in the book of life with a permanence that no human error or spiritual opposition can erase. You are mine. 3 words that should dismantle every orphan spirit, every feeling of cosmic aloneness, every sense that you are navigating the universe without covering or belonging. You are not adrift. You are owned by the most powerful being in existence, and that ownership is the foundation of your protection, your provision, and your ultimate vindication. The verdict of heaven also carries within it a specific declaration regarding the people and the forces that have opposed you. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17, a verse that many have heard but that deserves to be received at a level deeper than familiarity, declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from God. The word heritage is significant. A heritage is not something you earn in the moment. It is something you were born into. It is an inheritance that belongs to you by virtue of your relationship to the one who established it. The protection declared in that verse is not contingent on you being perfect enough to deserve it. It is your heritage. It belongs to you because of whose you are. Every accusation that has been leveled against your character, every lie that has been spoken over your future, every voice that has declared you disqualified, unworthy, too broken, too far behind, too damaged to be used, heaven has already issued its counter-verdict. Those voices have no standing. They have no jurisdiction. The court of eternity does not recognize their authority, and the God who sits as judge over all things has already ruled in your favor. The weapons may have been formed. The tongues may have risen, but they have not prospered and they will not prosper, because the verdict that stands over your life was spoken by a God whose word does not return to him void. There is something else the heavenly verdict declares over you that is perhaps the most personally meaningful of all. It declares that the years that were taken from you will be restored. Joel chapter 2 verse 25 carries God's own promise to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. Not some of those years, not a portion of what was lost. The years, the seasons of loss, the time that felt wasted in the wilderness, the years spent in the pit, or the prison, or the waiting room of delayed promise. God is declaring that none of it is gone beyond recovery. He is a God of restoration so complete that what the enemy took across years of attack, he can return in a single season of divine favor. The math of heaven does not work the way the math of earth works. What looks like an irretrievable deficit from a human perspective is simply a setup for a supernatural multiplication that leaves everyone who witnesses it without any natural explanation. You have been approved. The test is complete. The refining is finished. The wilderness season is closing. And heaven, which has been watching every moment of your journey with the full attention of a father who misses nothing about the child he loves, is now releasing over your life the verdict that was always going to be the conclusion of this story. The verdict is favor. The verdict is restoration. The verdict is elevation. The verdict is that everything the enemy spent years trying to prevent is now being released into your life with a momentum and a fullness that no force on earth or beneath the earth has any power to stop. Heaven has spoken, the verdict stands, and your rise is not coming. It has already begun. There is a moment when the fog lifts, when the long season of pressing through the unseen finally gives way to the visible, the tangible, the undeniably real. When what God spoke in the secret place begins to manifest in the open, and the people who watched you walk through the fire suddenly find themselves watching you walk in the fullness of everything the fire was preparing you for. That moment is not somewhere far off in the distance for you. That moment is not a vague and distant hope that requires another decade of waiting and wondering. That moment is now, and what is about to unfold in your life is not a trickle of blessing that barely compensates for what you endured. It is a flood. It is the kind of divine release that makes people around you catch their breath, because what God is about to do through your life cannot be explained by talent alone, by timing alone, by any natural combination of factors that the human mind would reach for to make sense of what they are witnessing The only explanation will be God, and that is exactly the point. So let us talk about what your divine rise actually looks like. Not in vague spiritual language that sounds beautiful, but lands nowhere specific. In real, concrete, life-altering terms. Because the blessing of God is not abstract. It touches real things. It opens real doors. It restores real relationships. It releases real resources. It positions real people in real places of real influence. And every single dimension of what is coming into your life has been specifically calibrated to match the assignment that was written over you before you were born. The first thing that marks the season of divine rise is a shift in access. Doors that were previously closed to you, not because you lacked the qualification, but because the timing was not yet aligned with the fullness of what God was building in you. Those doors begin to open. And they do not open because you finally knocked the right way, or found the right connection, or said the right thing to the right person. They open because God goes before you and makes the crooked places straight, as Isaiah chapter 45 verse 2 declares. The same God who closed doors in your previous season to protect you from what was behind them is the same God who is now opening doors that no man can shut. Doors that lead not just to opportunity but to divine appointment, to the specific intersections that your assignment requires. The people who are meant to be in your life in this new season are already being positioned. This is something the enemy does not want you to believe, because one of his most effective tactics against chosen ones who are entering their rising season is to allow the wounds of past betrayal to make them closed to new connection. He wants the pain of who left to make you suspicious of who is coming. He wants the memory of false alliances to make you shut the door on the genuine kingdom. Relationships that God has been preparing for you. Relationships with people who carry complementary gifts, aligned vision, and a genuine love for who you are rather than what you can offer them. Those people exist. They are being moved into position. And as you step into this new season with an open heart that has been healed enough by God to trust again, you will begin to recognize them by the fruit they carry, by the peace their presence brings, by the way the Spirit within you responds when they speak. Your provision is also shifting. The financial and material dimensions of your life are subject to the same divine upgrade that is touching every other area. Deuteronomy chapter 28 describes the blessings of God overtaking the person who walks in obedience, and the language of overtaking is important. It does not say the blessings will eventually catch up. It says they will overtake. They will arrive with a velocity that exceeds your forward movement, surrounding you and landing in your life faster than your own striving could have produced them. This is the economy of divine favor, and it operates on principles that defy the natural logic of how resources move in the world. You have sown in tears across years of faithfulness in the wilderness. Psalm 126 verse 5 says that those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. The harvest that is coming into your life is proportional, not just to what you planted, but to the conditions under which you planted it. Faithfulness in difficulty produces a harvest that faithfulness in comfort simply cannot generate. The area of your health, your wholeness, your physical and emotional restoration is also included in what God is releasing in this season. The exhaustion that accumulated across the years of the test, the toll that sustained spiritual warfare takes on a body and a mind and a nervous system. God is not indifferent to any of it. He is the God who heals, the God who restores, the God who renews strength so that those who wait on him will mount up with wings like eagles and run without growing weary and walk without fainting, as Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 declares. The renewal that is coming is not just spiritual. It is holistic. It touches every dimension of who you are, because the assignment that is ahead of you requires a whole person. And God is committed to producing exactly that. Your influence is also expanding. Not the kind of influence that comes from self-promotion, from the carefully managed presentation of a curated version of yourself designed to impress a particular audience. The kind of influence that comes when God begins to open the mouths of people who have watched your journey and uses their testimony about what they witnessed in you to position you in rooms and on platforms and in conversations that your own efforts could never have manufactured. The people who watched you endure with grace will be the same people who announce your elevation. Your character in the wilderness is becoming your credibility in the promised land. And the kingdom authority that was forged in the hidden seasons is about to become visible in ways that extend far beyond what you have yet imagined for yourself. This is the picture of your divine rise. Not one area touched while others remain unchanged. Every dimension, every department of your life, coming under the upgrading hand of a God who does all things well and who does not do anything in half measure when the fullness of time has arrived for one of his chosen ones to step into the completeness of their assignment. If something in your spirit is responding to these words right now, if you feel the stirring of recognition, the quiet fire of a soul that is beginning to see its own future more clearly than it has in a long time, we want to hear from you. Drop the words "I am ready" in the comments right now. 3 words, a declaration. Let it be the moment you plant a flag in the ground of your new season and say out loud, even if only in a comment, that you are stepping forward. And if this channel has been part of what has sustained you during the season that you are now emerging from, if these messages have been a voice of truth in the middle of seasons that needed exactly that, we want to say simply and sincerely that we are grateful for you. Keeping this ministry available to people who are walking through exactly the seasons you have walked through requires real resources. And if you feel moved in your heart to partner with us in that, the link to support this work is in the description below. It is completely voluntary, offered without pressure, and received with genuine gratitude. Even the act of liking this video, of sharing it with someone you know, who is standing at their own threshold, of subscribing so that you remain connected to what God continues to release through this community. Each of those things is a partnership that matters more than you know. You are not just a viewer here. You are part of a community of chosen ones who are all, in their own way, stepping into the fullness of what God has spoken over their lives. And we are honored to walk that road beside you. Your rise is not theoretical. It is not inspirational language designed to make you feel better for an hour before reality sets back in. It is the declared and imminent reality of a God who has finished the preparation and is now releasing the promise. Every single thing described in this section, the open doors, the aligned relationships, the restored provision, the expanding influence, it is all already in motion. Heaven has released it. Your only assignment now is to step forward to meet it. There is a shift that happens in a person when they finally understand who they are. Not who they were told. They were by the voices that shaped their earliest understanding of themselves. Not who they became in response to pain, rejection, and the long accumulating weight of seasons that pressed them down into a smaller version of what they were always meant to be. But who they actually are, at the level of divine design, at the level of eternal intention, at the level of the identity that was established in the heart of God before the world had a name. That shift is not a small thing. It is not a motivational adjustment or a psychological reframe or a seasonal upgrade in confidence. It is a fundamental transformation in the way a human being occupies their own existence. And it is exactly what is happening to you right now, in this moment. As the words being spoken over your life begin to land in places that have been waiting for this truth longer than you have known how to articulate the hunger. You have been operating under a set of labels for too long. Labels that were applied to you by people who did not have the authority to name you, who looked at the exterior of your journey and drew conclusions that were never accurate, but that you, in the vulnerability of your pain, began to receive as truth. The label of the one who does not quite make it. The label of the one who tries hard but falls short at the critical moment. The label of the one who is too sensitive, too intense, too much for the people around them to sustain. The label of the one who waits and hopes and believes, but somehow never quite arrives at the fullness of what they are reaching for. Those labels were never yours. They were assignments from the enemy, carefully designed to fit just closely enough to your experience that they felt true, crafted with just enough familiarity that you stopped questioning whether they belonged to you or not. But they were always lies dressed up in the language of evidence, and today those labels are being removed. The identity that is being restored to you in this season is not a new identity. It is your original one, the one that existed in the mind and heart of God before any human voice had the opportunity to overlay it with their own interpretation of who you were and what you were worth. The word restore implies that something existed, was taken or obscured, and is now being returned to its original state. God is not creating a new you from scratch. He is uncovering the you that was always there, beneath the layers of wounding and performance and survival strategy. He is peeling back the accumulated weight of other people's definitions and returning you to the clarity of his own. And his definition of you is not tentative, not qualified, not surrounded by the caveats and conditions that human assessment always carries. It is absolute. It is permanent. It is spoken with the full authority of the one who made you and therefore knows you more completely than any other voice ever could. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 says that if anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old has passed away, and the new has come. That verse is often read as a statement about moral renewal, about the forgiveness of sin and the cleansing of the past. And it's absolutely that. But it is also a statement about identity. The old self, the self that was defined by its wounds, shaped by its losses, confined by its history, that self has passed away. What has come? What is? Present right now in you, and over you and through you, is something new. Something that carries the authority of heaven. Something that the fire refined, but did not diminish. Something that the wilderness formed, but did not destroy. Something that every attack the enemy launched against your life ultimately served to reveal rather than remove. You are a tested and crowned overcomer. Let those words land one at a time. Tested, meaning you have been through the examination and emerged with a grade that heaven itself has validated. You did not skip the test. You did not take a shortcut around it. You sat in it. You endured it. You pressed through the parts that felt impossible, and you came out the other side, carrying something that only the tested possess. The authority that comes from proven faith is qualitatively different from the confidence that comes from untested belief. You carry the former. You know God not just as a theological proposition, but as a living reality you have encountered in the darkest and most desperate moments of your journey. That knowing is unshakable because it was forged in conditions that would have shaken everything that was not genuinely real. Crowned, meaning the season of proving is finished and the season of reigning is beginning. A crown is not a reward for suffering. It is a symbol of authority, of the right to occupy a position of influence and impact in the kingdom of God. The crown being placed on your life in this season is the outward acknowledgement of the inward work that God has been doing across every season you have walked through. It is the declaration that you are no longer in the position of the one being tested. You are now in the position, the one being commissioned. The posture shifts from endurance to authority, from survival to sovereignty, from holding on to stepping forward with the full weight of divine backing behind every move you make. Overcomer, meaning this is not simply a description of what you survived. It is a declaration of what you have become. Revelation chapter 21 verse 7 says that the one who overcomes will inherit all things, and I will be their God, and they will be my child. The inheritance belongs to the overcomer, not the observer, not the one who watched from a safe distance, not the one who avoided the difficulty by never engaging with the depth of what God was asking of them. The one who went through it, who faced it, who did not retreat from the weight of the journey, even when retreat would have been the easier and more immediately comfortable option. That is you. You are the overcomer, and the inheritance that belongs to overcomers is now being released into every dimension of your life. There is something that happens to the people around a chosen one when that chosen one steps fully into their identity. It changes the atmosphere of every room they enter, not because they become louder or more forceful or more demanding of attention, but because there is a settledness, a groundedness, a quiet authority that emanates from a person who knows exactly who they are in God and is no longer negotiating that identity with the opinions of the world around them. People feel that. Even people who cannot name what they are feeling will sense that something is different, that something has shifted, that the person standing in front of them carries something that goes beyond personality or charisma or natural gifting. What they are sensing is the weight of a tested and crowned identity that has been anchored in the unshakable love and purpose of God. You are not the same person who entered the wilderness. You are not the same person who walked through the fire. You are not the same person who sat in the silence and wondered if the promises of God would ever materialize in any tangible form. That person went through the process, and on the other side of it, a different version emerged. Not different in essence, different in depth, different in authority, different in the certainty with which they occupy the space God has prepared for them. The wounds are healed or healing. The fear has been confronted and is losing its grip. The lies of the enemy about your identity are being exposed for what they always were, and in their place, the truth of who God says you are is taking up permanent residence in the deepest and most foundational parts of who you are. This is your new identity, not earned by performance, not contingent on continued perfection, not subject to revision every time you have a difficult day, or a moment of weakness, or a season that tests your resolve again. This identity is settled. It is sealed. It is spoken by a God who does not change his mind about the people he has called. And it is the ground you will stand on for the rest of your life, the immovable foundation from which every act of faith, every step of obedience, every kingdom assignment that unfolds from this moment forward will be launched. You are tested, you are crowned, you are an overcomer, and that is not who you are becoming, that is who you already are. This is the moment everything has been building toward. Not just the 10 sections of this message, not just the journey of listening and receiving and allowing the truth of what God has spoken to settle into the places that needed it most. This is the moment that the entirety of your life, every chapter you have lived through, every season you have endured, every test you have passed, every fire you have walked through and emerged from, has been building toward. This is your commissioning. This is the threshold between the person who survived and the person who now steps forward to fulfill every single thing that was written over their life before they drew their first breath. And nothing about this moment is accidental. You did not arrive here by coincidence. You were led here, guided here, brought to this exact moment by the same sovereign hand that has been on your life since before you were formed in the womb. So hear this clearly, chosen one. The season of waiting is finished. The season of proving is complete. The season of being prepared in the hidden place is closing its final chapter, and what is opening before you now is something that no amount of human language can fully capture. Though we will try, because you need to hear it said out loud. What is opening before you is the fullness of your assignment, the real one, not the diminished version that fear and pain and the weight of the wilderness caused you to settle for in previous seasons. Not the version that was small enough to feel safe, manageable enough to not require more faith than you thought you possessed. The full, unedited, heaven-authored version of what God placed inside you before the world began. That version is what is being released into your life right now, and it is bigger and more breathtaking and more far-reaching than anything you have yet allowed yourself to fully imagine. The call that is on your life is not just for you. It never was. The testing you endured, the depth that was forged in the wilderness, the authority that was built through the fire, none of it was designed to produce a blessing that stops with you. You were tested and crowned and commissioned, not so that your life would simply be more comfortable than it was before, not so that the favor of God would accumulate around you like a private reservoir that you alone enjoy. You were prepared for impact. You were forged for influence. You were refined for a reach that extends far beyond the borders of your own story and touches the lives of people who are still in the middle of their own tests, their own wildernesses, their own seasons where they desperately need someone who has been through it to tell them that the God who brought you through will bring them through too. Your story is a weapon against the enemy's lies. Every time you open your mouth and testify to the faithfulness of God across the hard seasons of your life, you are dismantling the narrative the enemy has been building in the hearts of people who have not yet seen their breakthrough. Every time you stand in the fullness of your crowned identity and refuse to shrink back into the smallness that the world tried to assign to you, you are demonstrating to someone watching that it is possible, that the promises of God are real, that the test does end, that the wilderness does give way to the promised land, that the fire does have an exit and what comes out of it is more valuable than what went in. Revelation chapter 12, verse 11 tells us that the people of God overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Your testimony is not just your personal victory lap. It is a weapon of warfare that carries genuine spiritual authority. The enemy fears your story. He fears you stepping into the fullness of who you are and beginning to speak, to live, to lead, to love, to create, to build, to serve from the place of the crowned overcomer rather than the wounded survivor. Because a wounded survivor can be managed and contained and kept small. But a crowned overcomer who knows their identity, who has passed the test and received the verdict of heaven and stepped fully into the authority of their assignment, that person is one of the most disruptive forces for good and for God that the kingdom possesses. So step forward, not tentatively, not with one foot still in the wilderness, not carrying the posture of someone who is still waiting to be confirmed by the people around them before they are willing to fully occupy the space God has prepared. Step forward with both feet, with your whole heart, with the full weight of every lesson the journey taught you, with the authority that the fire forged and the wilderness developed and the surrender of the final phase produced. Step forward as who you actually are, a tested and crowned overcomer who has been approved by heaven, commissioned by God, and released into a season of rising that has no ceiling but the one you choose to impose on it yourself. The world around you is waiting for what you carry. There are people in your sphere of influence, people you have not yet met, and people you have known for years, who are holding needs that only the version of you that emerged from the fire can meet. Not because you are perfect, not because you have all the answers, but because you carry the credibility of someone who went through the dark and came out holding the light. And that credibility speaks to people in ways that polish and performance simply cannot reach. Do not delay. Do not wait for perfect conditions, because perfect conditions are not coming, and the chosen ones of God have never operated from perfect conditions. They have always operated from surrendered hearts and obedient feet, and the unshakable confidence that the God who called them is more than sufficient to equip them for every step of the road ahead, that God is your God. And He is saying to you right now in this moment with all the tenderness and authority of a father, watched every moment of your journey and has never once stopped believing in the fullness of what He placed inside of you. Go. The time is now. Rise. The season has come. Step forward. Heaven is behind you. Now, before we close, there is something we want to share with you from the heart, completely transparently and without any pressure attached to it whatsoever. This channel has had its monetization removed by YouTube. That means these videos generate no advertising income, not a single cent from the platform itself. But we made a decision, and that decision was that we would keep going anyway. Because this is not a business to us. This is a ministry. And the people who need to hear that they are chosen, that they passed the test, that their rise is real and it is now, those people matter more to us than any algorithm or income stream ever could. Every video you watch here is made purely out of a desire to serve, to reach the person who is in the middle of their wilderness and needs a voice to remind them that God has not forgotten them. That is why we do this. That is the only reason we do this. And if God has used this message to speak something real into your life today, if something in these words reached a place that needed reaching, and if you feel in your heart a genuine desire to help this ministry continue, to help us keep producing this content for the people who are waiting for it, there is a donation link in the description below and in the pinned comment. Everything there is completely voluntary. There is no amount too small and no pressure attached to any of it. If you are in your own wilderness season and giving is simply not where you are right now, please know that your presence here is already a gift, and we are grateful for every moment you spend in this community. If you feel led to give, whatever amount feels right in your heart, it goes directly into keeping this ministry alive and reaching the people who need it. And if giving is not possible right now, simplest thing you can do is like this video. Share it with one person who needs to hear that God said they passed the test, and subscribe so that you remain connected to every message that God continues to release through this channel. You are not just a viewer. You are part of something, and we are honored, deeply and genuinely honored, to walk this road beside you. Type the words "I am rising" in the comments right now. Let that be your declaration. Let it be the moment you plant your flag in the ground of this new season and announce to heaven and earth that the chosen one has heard the verdict, received the crown, and is stepping forward into everything God has been preparing since before time began. Your divine rise begins now.